Okay, so this is for character mapping, and this was a request from Discovery. So essentially, what character mapping is when you load a wrestler in game, the engine takes the wrestler ID. So if you look in your roster table, you see the 512, etc. It takes this ID and it looks inside the character mapping file for that ID. So I have a mod of Brian Danielson, which is 883. Now if I search in here, 883, there he is. And 883 will exist in the roster table. There we go. So I'm in game, I go to the selection screen, I click Brian. As soon as I go past that menu, the engine takes this wrestler ID, goes inside this file, looks for this ID here, so it finds it, then it asks for the character path, which is this folder. Then it asks for the default attire folder, which is this folder. Then it asks for the default attire here, which is that. Then the default attire MTLS, which contains all the material definitions for the character. So if I open up my MTLS editor, and I open my Danielson, so this is an MTLS. Each one of these corresponds to a mesh name in the MDL. And what it'll do is it'll look for the textures. So you can see here it's looking for the shoe color, the shoes and RM. Same principle with the knee pad color, knee pad air and RM. So the engine needs to know what it needs to know what materials and textures to call. So that's why it looks for the MTLS. It's the same point for the base model MDL and the base model MTLS. So it's going here, it's going, okay, I found it. And then once it finds that, it then goes here and tries to load each one of these files. Now some of the mods will have a YCL. Now, if you're using a YCL from 2K22, sometimes you will need to run the reformatter. All you do is you put the Python script in the folder with the YCL, then run the Python script, and it will convert that YCL to the 2K23 format. You may experience crashes if you don't convert it. It doesn't need to be done on all YCLs, but it's worth just running it through if you're using one from 2K22. Another thing is the folder names. These folder names can be anything that you want. They're not specific to anything. And I'm choosing Brian for a reason, because when I released it, I didn't actually name the folder inside here correctly. See, it says 581 still. But inside here, it still says 581. Now, does that matter? No. Because what the engine looks for is it looks for extensions. So it looks for HPL, MDL, MTLS. It does not give a fuck about these names. So this folder here could be called something like Mike Eats Crayons. It doesn't matter what it wants to be. However, the base model must be called this. I found that if you change this, the game acts really strange. So, what's the best way of doing this? Well, there's two ways. You can go through the character creation suite, as I showed in the introduction, and you can select the folders one by one here. And as soon as you do that, if I open up a profile, let's pull up my Claudio, you'll see it's generated the character mapping for you. Now, going through the character creation suite is kind of long-winded. The other method that a lot of people seem to be using now is the hash generator, which is found in the utility hash generator. And what you can do is just select the files. What's the fucking... So if I wanted to find his MDL, so if I go Brian, base model, MDL, and what it's done is generated this hash here. All you do is copy this, and you put it there. Obviously it's the same, so I don't need to change anything. But a lot of people do this. It's the same principle with the character path here, with the folder. You just select folder instead, generates it, no problems. Now, another thing to remember is with your mods. If it does not contain a CTG and an MTLS for a custom folder, it will crash. These must be here. And it's the same principle here for the MTLS and MDLs in the attires. These must exist. If they don't, then you're just gonna see a lot of wild shit of crashing. HPL doesn't necessarily need to exist. That's masking, which I've got another tutorial on. Again, remember about the YCL. Another one to remember is the WDF. If you see a WDF file, that is the animation file for beards. And bringing them over from 22 will crash your game. So don't use them. If you see a WDF, you're going to have to delete it for now as a temporary solution and add face animations to the beard. So you're transferring the face animations to the beard with local area transfer data mesh. That's a temporary fix until it gets figured out. But yes, for the most part, that is all that character mapping is. One thing to keep in mind, make sure you are using the latest cake tools. I'm on 1.03. I think that's out of date, but it works the same. Anything above that is what you need. And the reason for that is an MTLS now has a hash inside it, inside hex. So I can't pull it up because you won't understand it. But there's a hash in there that is looking for this structure, similar to these here, but that's inside the MTLS. And the reason I tell you to use 1.03 and above is Cake Tools will regenerate that hash for you rather than having to manually open up the MTLS editor and save. So make sure you use anything above this and you won't experience any issues. But otherwise, you'll run into a problem where the wrestler will look black and shiny, textures will be missing. It's because of the hash. It can't find the textures, obviously, because it's looking in a different folder structure. I hope this helps. It's very basic. Any issues or whatever. Oh, actually, there is a locked value here. Now, if I remember correctly from Nyan, this tells it to load the My Faction attire. Now, I think that's all bollocks. And what I do is I just remove it and do a whole custom folder structure. It's just not worth the hassle of fighting it. Just remap it. Okay, well, this helps. Thanks. Bye.